Some real problems, Maria, as outlined, of what's going on with the EU, and that will be discussed today at the Leaders Summit. At the same time, European stocks year to date are doing much better than the U.S., and they're still relatively cheap. Do you think now is a time that if you're not exposed to Europe, you want to get in and buy equities?
Well, I think it's time to be invested in equities, but whether you want to have a European bias or not is not so much a function of what's going on in the EU, which, by the way, I think reveals more profound structural shortcomings of EU politics. This vaccine controversy highlights the lack of coordination, the lack of industrial policy. One of the two messenger RNA companies that successfully and very rapidly developed a solution, a vaccine for that virus, was born out of Germany, but backed by US capital and a JV with an American company. It shows the lack of European interest and support in innovation. That's a very, very big deficit. That's structural. And frankly, the image that it projects to the rest of the world, we've seen recently surveys that the young Chinese have a falling opinion of Western leaderships and Western democracies. This reveals that in difficult times like the pandemic, cohesion, clear leadership is absolutely crucial. So when it comes to European equities, it's a different story because the names, the companies that populate the EU indices are by definition global companies geared to the global cycle with value bias precisely because of that lack of industrial policy. We're talking about old business model, old industries populating these indices. And of course, they have been, in recent weeks and months, the main beneficiary of the equity rally as money eventually shifted out of COVID winners into COVID losers.
Where do you see the European economy going? Because March Eurozone manufacturing and UK Eurozone manufacturing, pretty big numbers on the prints yesterday. Is the risk to the downside given the virus and vaccine rollout and the troubles in the Eurozone?
Yeah, obviously, they will lag the US, the European economies, but every indicator, and there's every reason to believe there's plenty pent-up demand from the consumer, so they will follow the general pattern, although the stimulus measures are nowhere near as radical as what we've seen in the US by the new Biden administration. And at the same time, a slightly different mix, more long-term, more indirect stimulus through infrastructure spending rather than direct to consumer, direct to households.